The Canon EOS 200D has been my camera of choice for the last 5 years. I have recorded absolutely everything on this camera, from music videos, tutorials and reviews on this channel to working out in the home gym on my second channel, even all the way through to my brand new YouTube channel with me and the boys, where we record whatever it is when we go out, whether that's shooting guns in the mountains or recording content for our socials, whatever, it's been recorded on this camera. As much as I love this camera, it is time for an upgrade. Yesterday I went to JB Hi-Fi and picked up the SONY Zv-E10, because that's a mouthful to say. We'll pronounce it the wrong way, Zv-E10, which pains me to say as an Australian, but nonetheless, the SONY Zv-E10. There's a few important reasons why I've decided to switch over to Sony from Canon. Again, I love this camera, but I just think Sony is probably the way to go for the moment. We'll look at a few of those reasons in a second, but now I think it is time to retire this camera. It's going to become my secondary camera, and we can shoot videos like this, where we've got the main over here, then all of a sudden I'm talking over here, and it looks like we cut to that, and then this looks really professional, and maybe I can do sitcom-y sort of looks like that. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But now I've got a second camera angle and then a third if I set up the new GoPro that I just bought. Right, I've set up the camera. It is ready to go. I've moved the Canon over to the right a little bit. I think the general rule of thumb is roughly a 30-degree difference in the camera angle. And then of course you can get differences in height. So I can make this one lower facing up at me or higher facing down at me, whatever I want. Currently they're both at the same eye level, but that one is zoomed in a little bit more. With the settings on the camera, I've set the shutter speed to 1/50, the f-stop at 3.5, and then the exposure composition to -0.7 with an automatic ISO. The last thing that I'll note is I have turned on the active stabilization for the Sony because it gives me a 40% crop. That means I don't have to zoom in the kit lens and then lose my 3.5 aperture. So now that we've spoken about everything I need to on this camera, we can now officially compare the 1080p from the Canon EOS 200D over to the Sony Zv-E10 at 4K. Here we are, 25 frames per second, because we're in the Australia PAL system, PAL, so I don't have weird lights going on in the background. But here we are, 4K. Got the eye tracking on. It's on my right eye, then it's on my left eye. Right eye, it's really helpful. Autofocus seems to be really good. It's tracking me exceptionally well. I've set up the audio, I hope, correctly, and I think everything else looks good. I would like to see what the different shutter speeds do when I'm playing the guitar, to see if they change the look of the strings when they're vibrating. That's just one of the things that I want to test out today. But here's my new talking head shot. The intros and outros will probably mostly be recorded in this sort of shot, unless I'm standing up and I'll be facing the camera at the guitar wall, which is of course to my left over there. Thinking about the guitars, I might get some B-roll footage of some of the instruments and put that up to see what it looks like with some close-ups and some zooming and stuff like that. I think I'm getting used to the camera. I've worked out how to click the function button or the quick menu setting on the camera so that it just pops up really quickly, and then I can sort of sort through all of those without needing to turn the camera around and looking at it. So that's helpful, really helpful. I've also dialed in my settings accurately. I think they're the best that I can get them. Auto white balance, everything else is basically normal settings. I will mention that with this camera, I've also bought a 256GB SD card, which is lucky because my 128 in that camera doesn't actually record 4K, so that's nice that I bought that. And I also got a couple of additional batteries. These are knockoffs, so they're not actually Sony, but I hope they work. They should. Now, why the Zv-E10, and more specifically, why did I switch from Canon over to Sony? Unless something changes within the next 5 years, I'm thinking that the SONY A7 III will be my end goal camera. It seems to be the most commonly used camera amongst the YouTube professionals with millions of subscribers, and I assume there's probably a reason for that. So with that in mind, I thought I would go with the Sony camera to not only first familiarize myself with the camera itself, but to also save money, because all of the lenses that I buy for this camera in the near future will also transfer over to the Sony A7 III. Of course, there'll be a difference between the crop sensor camera and the full frame camera, but that's beside the point. And speaking of lenses, I'm sure that you're all aware of the Canon lens problem. There's way more lenses on offer for Sony cameras that are also sometimes a little bit more budget friendly. Those are the main reasons as to why I went with Sony over Canon, but why did I buy the Zv-E10? This camera records in 4K but downsampled from 6K, which means the quality is excellent. You've got incredible autofocus. Again, the vast amount of sometimes budget-friendly lenses. I've got 120p slow motion recording capabilities, which would be really cool to record things like a bullet leaving the end of a barrel. Helpful for the third YouTube channel. Headphone jack so I can set up my audio correctly. We've got the flip out screen and then a 24 megapixel camera so that I can take some really good photos. With all that done, it's time to move on and start recording some test footage. I want to begin with the guitar. get a little bit of a zoom happening. I don't know how to work the focus just yet, but I've turned it off of the face and eye tracking, so we'll see how this goes. Now I just want to change the shutter speed just to see what it does. Alright, now set to 250. Generally speaking, you want your shutter speed to be twice your frame rate, which means at 25 frames per second, my shutter speed should be 1/50. Just as an experiment, I boosted the shutter speed up to 250, and what I think is going to happen is the movement of the string will be picked up more. You'll see more of the vibration. It's either going to be right, backwards, or just completely wrong. So just a little experiment to see what happens if I boost up the shutter speed. Last thing I want to work on is the framing for this shot right here, which I think I've got pretty much perfect. As I was flicking through the display options for the screen, I came across this one that's got a level, and then I've still got my shutter speed at 1/50, f-stop aperture at 3.5, got my exposure composition at -0.7, and ISO on automatic, which is switching between 250 and 200 around there. But I've got all of that plus recording for 35 seconds, and then my 2 channels of audio. With this level, then I can see the eye tracking focus thing. But my level here tells me if the camera is offside or if it's too far forward or backwards. So this is really nice, and it's going to be exceptional for when I'm trying to do my piano tutorials, because every time I set up the camera for that, it's a little bit skew width. But that is the Sony Zv-E10. I'm already absolutely thrilled with the camera. If you want me to make a video specific about it itself, let me know. But this is more of just a little, I bought a new camera, prepare yourselves for the future content because it's going to be the best. And then testing myself to make sure it is the best. That's sort of the idea for this video. But I've experimented with the camera today. I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out all the different new features, all the different new functions, and I am really, really happy with it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you later.